edge. Again, that was a $1 billion bill for all of us. And just to illustrate one more time, the single sawtooth moving on to the double W sawtooth trailing edge. Again, an interesting report from New York Times, which had the same type wing redesign. Now, we move on to an Aviation Week Space Technology report from March 9th, 1992, which talked about a number of classified programs and details which are actually being used within the B-2 bomber. One of them being that the B-2 electrically charges the leading edge of the wing to reduce the radar cross-section, and then electrically charges the exhaust gases to reduce the infrared signature. Now, what happens when you do this, according to a 1968 report from Northrop, is there is a resulting drag coefficient reduction up to 60%. And these engineers were very upset that this kind of technology was not being filtered down to the civilian airline industry, which would help all of us. This could in turn reduce the fuel consumption on airliners by 60%, just a tremendous increase in efficiency. But what also happens here is when you electrically charge the leading edge of the wing and then ionize negatively the exhaust gases, you set up what's called a gravity wave, where there's a gravity well in front of the aircraft and a gravity hill in back of the aircraft, essentially turning this thing into an over-unity device where you can shut down the engines and this thing will run on its own. So very interesting. Avro, which is now British Aerospace, had their own design for electrogravitic propulsion aircraft. And then we have the similar early B-2 concept design, and then following up with the final design of the B-2 on the bottom here. Now this is the patent, that's number 4,989,006. One of the technologies used on the B-2 is a radar absorbent technology. This is the patent that actually shows how this is done, embedded inside the leading edge of the B-2. Now, if you can't spend billions that Northrop has done, there's another way to do this. One way to make a conventional aircraft stealthy is to ionize the entire aircraft with a plasma stealth in front of the aircraft, and that's what's being shown in this patent right here by Boyd Bushman. He's a retired Lockheed Skunk Works engineer who came up with this particular design. Now this is the cost analysis of the B-2 procurement funding. Now we mentioned by '83 they spent a grand total of $22.4 billion on the B-2 program. And so we'll quickly break through some of these different costs here. We're going to give Northrop $35 million for the development of stealth technology. We're just going to give that to them off the bat. We're going to give them $65 million for their Pico Rivera plant, where not many of the components were put together. To build Tacit Blue, which we already showed, we're going to give them $1 billion for that. $100,000 salary for 4,000 people, that's $400 million. To purchase computers, we're going to give them $2 billion for that, and then to purchase equipment, we'll throw in $2 billion for that. That gives us a grand total of $5.5 billion. We subtract that amount from the $22.4 billion that was spent, and we're left with a remaining $16.9 billion that disappeared into thin air. Absolutely no funding, no accounting for this missing $16.9 billion. We have no idea where this money went. It's just an absolute tragedy. I'm proposing that some of that funding was filtered off into a different, more advanced version of the B-2, something that over 25,000 eyewitnesses in the Hudson Valley area saw and witnessed between 1982 and 1988. Thousands of people pulled off to the side of the road, saw this gigantic boomerang flying wing-shaped device that had a same type version of the B-2, but the single sawtooth trailing edge identical to the original design of the B-2 prior to the wing redesign. Now, if you doubt me on some of these electrogravitic propulsion technologies, I invite you to pick up a copy of this book. It's called Electrogravitic Systems by Thomas Vallone. Reports on a new propulsion methodology, specifically goes into details of how this system works on the B-2. Leslie Kulba from Electric Spacecraft Journal wrote a really good review here, and she says an underlying theme is that T.T. Brown propulsion, once developed, will usher in an age of flight so